So next week marks the 20th anniversary of the launch of the first PlayStation console here in the UK. And to mark the occasion, we're very lucky to have someone who's been with the PlayStation project since the very beginning. Joining me on stage to talk about his memories of 20 years of play, please welcome Sony Computer Entertainment's President of Worldwide Studios, Shuhei Yoshida.
Hello. Hello. Thank you for coming. It's overwhelming. Thank you, Ori, for inviting.
Take a seat. So, as I said, we're very lucky to have you here, particularly because you have an overview of the entire PlayStation project. So, I mean, you joined Sony back in the 80s, but when was the first time you actually became involved with PlayStation?
Okay, yes. It was the early 1993. I was doing at Sony, Sony Electronics Company, doing the helping the PC business. We are doing the OEM for Apple. If you know that the first PowerBook notebook computer for Apple, PowerBook 100, was designed and manufactured by Sony. So I was there, communicating with the Apple people to do experimental, pen computing system. At that time, pen computing was a big thing.
Yeah.
But that, went bust. All the companies working on pen computing, realized that it was too early to do some kind of, the device was not there and CPU power. So when I was looking for a job inside the company, I was called by my former boss, Terry Tokunaka, who eventually became the first president of Sony Computer Entertainment, to meet with this person, Ken Kutaragi. He knew me, Terry knew me as a huge gamer, because I was kind of advising the small project. Sony, actually Ken's team was working with Nintendo. That didn't, go well. So I met with Ken, and for the first time, and Ken said that his system he was making is gonna be like the computer graphics workstation of the time that cost like $100,000 or something. And he said the same power he will put in this small game machine and sell it for $500. And I was like, wow, this guy is a liar, this guy. So I went back to Terry, and Terry, he's a liar, right? And Terry said, no, I believe what Ken is saying. And I was like, that's unbelievable, let me in. So that's how I got into Ken's small R&D team. At that time was like about 20 engineers, just all of them, really smart engineers working on the system. And I was the very first non-technical guy because Sony was looking to move the project from R&D stage to the business stage. So I was called in as around the help on the business side. Right. So that's the beginning.
Can you remember the first PlayStation game that you saw running?
Yeah, so as many of you may know that when we develop a new hardware, we start by developing like a software emulated version of like a core CPU and GPU. And I remember on workstation, some very, very early, like a conceptual prototype of a game we eventually released as a Jumping Flash, the game, the small things jump, very high. That I saw on emulation. And also also one of the internal team, led by actually Kazunori Yamauchi, was working on early prototype of Motor Twin Grand Prix. And I think that was one of the earliest games running on the system.
What was Ken Kutaragi like to work for?
Ken is really nice person now. Well, yes, thank you. Yeah, so yeah, he still come to our office like occasionally. Every time he sees some news about something and visit us and ask, what are you doing? And but when he comes back to our office now, he's with big smiles and he looks super happy. Nothing like he was when he was running. But actually, he was so well respected by the engineers that he led that I was like looking besides the group of core engineering team working for him. And the biggest challenge I used to hear from the people in the engineering team was every week, like in the Monday morning, he might come up with totally new, different idea and completely forget what he was directing the week before and shout at people that, why are you doing this? We should do that. And that kept going on. So his strength seems to me to be able to throw away everything he was working on when he saw something not going well and totally start anew. And his drive and passion and knowledge, maybe he was the hardest worker in the office. And he was doing research of all these computing in architectures and systems. So he knew more than most of the engineers that he worked for. So that was a lot of energy coming out from that small group. But I understood that the guys working for Ken, while it was really hard and sometimes a bit abusive, but they were very, very happy and excited to be in the part of the process of designing PlayStation because they knew they are working on something totally groundbreaking.
What was the first PlayStation game that you worked on where you thought, yes, this is it, this is why we're doing this?
Actually, I started out as a manager in the third-party relations group for the Japanese publishers. And I was the account managing companies like Namco, Konami, and these companies. And especially Namco was the huge, important third-party partners. As you know, that the Ridge Racer was the one we really wanted to have for the launch. And Namco, of course, was the company we targeted at the very, very early in the process of evangelizing and recruiting for PlayStation because we knew that Namco had that 3D, high-end graphics capability in the arcade, but they didn't have the outlet in the consumer business to use their expertise on the 2D-based consoles of the time. So, and luckily, they totally agreed. And they became the very first company to say that, yes, we work with Sony to bring their games to PlayStation. So supporting Namco as an account manager for me was the most crucial job. And when I saw the Ridge Racer running on the early prototype of PlayStation, and that was the time I thought that, yes, we will have a product.
And what's your memory of actually launching the machine and getting it out there in front of consumers?
So the PlayStation launched in December 1994 in Japan. So it launched in September 95 in Europe, right? In US as well. So at that time, we were still a small company, and we didn't have the expertise and organizational reach to support the global launch that we are doing now, with PlayStation 4. So it took us 9 months from the launch of PlayStation in Japan to US and European launch. So it was the hardest, of course, to launch in Japan because the developers have the shortest time in terms of making games ready for the launch. So I was account manager for Namco, Konami, and a small company called ArtLink, who did the train simulator called A-Train. And Konami had parodied the shooter game for the launch. So all three companies that I was helping had the launch title. So I was very, very excited and proud to be the part of the launch. So I remember the morning, in the morning of the launch day in Japan, in Shinjuku, I was standing outside the large, like a camera retailer, Yodobashi or somewhere, selling the PlayStation 1. There are a huge line of people waiting to get the system, and everyone who got hold on PlayStation got a couple of games that I helped, launch with big smiles, walked out of the retailer. That was a huge, moment for me.
And looking back on that first PlayStation console, what games really defined it for you, do you think?
Yeah, so I think everyone has their favorite for PlayStation titles, but during PS1 generation, there are so many great franchises were born. From the beginning, of course, Namco had the Ridge Racer and Tekken, and Capcom released Resident Evil. That was groundbreaking title for us. And Squaresoft at the time, of course, Final Fantasy VII, really made PlayStation the dominant force, at least in Japan. And Metal Gear Solid was an amazing game from Kojima-san. The latest one, Metal Gear Solid 5, is my favorite, Metal Gear game, but still at that time was a groundbreaking title. And from European developers, Wipeout was really showed how games can be a cultural thing for adults. I remember because PlayStation had the CD-ROM, we were excited to put the real music, on it. And Wipeout team put I think band like Chemical Brothers on it. That was totally new and showed how we are trying to message to people that with PlayStation, adults, you don't have to be embarrassed to play games. And that game like Wipeout really showed that messaging. And of course, Tomb Raider was big. The use of 3D technology in that format, I was really excited to play that game. There are so many, great franchises.
So with PlayStation, you were the new kids on the block entering the video games market.
Absolutely.
When PlayStation 2 development came around, that was no longer true, and it was someone else's, Microsoft's turn to go first. How was the experience different for you at Sony?
PS2 actually was, because of the eventual success of PlayStation, the momentum was there from the whole industry, publishers were very excited and prepared to support it. And actually, that was that was the learning curve for us. I was already moved to product development, game development side of things, and after I launched games like Ape Escape and Legend of Dragoon in 1999. The launch of PS2 was 2000. So what we all realized internally was, because it was a very fast, generational transition for us, but for the game industry, they've been doing it for many times, right? Like EA and all those, great publishers are totally prepared to make games for PS2, especially using a PC platforms. But we are almost we are still making PS1 games, until the very right before the launch of PlayStation 2. So I managed to have a game called Fantavision, for the launch. But after that, I got ridiculed inside the company for the longest time, having just Fantavision. But I always said that, I at least had a nice little puzzle game for the launch, it's other studios who didn't deliver for the launch. Because I was not, at that time responsible for many studios. But so the system-wise, because all those great, third-party publishers supported from the very beginning, and also it was the right time for just the time that DVD as a medium for movie viewing was becoming popular, and the PlayStation 2 offered really affordable system for people who wanted to purchase DVD. I remember the biggest selling launch title of PS2 was Matrix, the movie. So that's my memory of launch of PS2. Eventually, there are lots of great games released on PS2, but the launch was really difficult for us software teams in Sony.
What's your defining memory of the PS2 years later on?
PS2 years I clearly remember the impact that when the Grand Theft Auto 3 was announced and shown at one E3 time. That was amazing. We were seeing a little bit of this sandbox type of gaming design that released at the very late, like a PS1 era. Like a game like Tony Hawk was amazingly fun. There's just a place and a rule set, and you are free to do anything. Or games like Driver was very, very attractive. You can drive around the city and do things anywhere. But when Grand Theft Auto 3 came out, the whole city was playable, and you can do anything. That was shocking. And was the biggest impact on me.
Getting into portable gaming with PSP was quite a big risk for Sony. How did you feel about that at the time?
Well, it's interesting you ask. I never thought it was a risk for Sony. Actually, I was one of the advocates of we should do portable. I've been saying it, and I was just one of these studio people at the time, so I didn't have any influence to company's decision. But the point I was saying was because console business, from business standpoint, is always cyclical, right? There's launch and peak years, and so having a portable business to kind of bridge these console transition might be a good thing for the company. And it just happened, PSP was launched in between, toward the end of PS2 and PS2, and still, preparing for PS3. And we are so excited to have at the time like a big LCD screen, and we were like, you can play PS2 graphics games on the portable system. So I was managing studio in the US at that time, but I was very antsy to get my hands on the early unit that was launched in Japan first in December of 2004, I think.
Well, things changed a lot at the time of the PlayStation 3. Your competitors were going in different directions with online networks, with motion control. Did it feel like a different launch for you?
I always believed that the video game business or industry is almost bulletproof, because any technological advancement, we just suck it in and use it as a tool to create a new gaming entertainment experience. So the launch of PlayStation was really seized the chance to bring the real-time 3D graphics tech onto game console, and we added online capability during the PS2 era. That was available for PC gaming for a long time, but we were able to seize the time to bring that online capability to console. So it was a very natural thing for me when the Nintendo did that very smart motion gaming. we are looking at the advancement of sensors and tracking technology that we should leverage these advancements to create new types of gaming experience. So for me, it's just natural for us in the platform company to always look for what new technology becomes available, which the game developers can find it very useful to create some new experience that wow people. And the biggest of all for me is, of course, virtual reality. I'm super excited with PlayStation VR.
By that time, the new boss of Sony Computer Entertainment was Kaz Hirai. How were things different under Kaz?
Very, very different. Yeah, of course, without Ken, there was no PlayStation. So I owe him a lot, for that. And lots of people who enjoy PlayStation, if it were not for Ken Kutaragi, to bulldoze the way in the Sony corporation of that time was very successful in consumer electronics, was questioning, lots of executives at Sony were questioning Sony to go into this kiddie gaming business. So Ken's approach was always to push the semiconductor a tech. He eventually wanted to create a supercomputer, and for him, especially for the cell chip with PS3, he had much bigger vision to almost leverage the gaming business into dominate the world, whatever. But we all realized that with time goes on, people are getting, or game developers are getting more value from not just the hardware side, but from the system software capability and network services capability to really create a great experience for consumers. So the switch, moved from Ken's leadership to Kaz Hirai's leadership was really to respond to that change in the business. And Kaz's approach, because he's a business person, was to really help or almost push the hardware team to work really closely with the game development software team, which I was, one of the leaders. So right after Kaz took over, I had a chance, Phil Harrison left, and I took over the head of Worldwide Studios, and Kaz asked me to move to Japan. I was, managing studios in the US at that time, to be really close to the hardware team. So ever since, so I moved from the US back to Japan in 2008. And ever since, I spent almost half my time, working with the hardware team to kind of help discuss the solution for, hardware issues that they are confronting to give from the software developer's view. Not me saying something, but for me to be in Japan and connecting the right game developers, right studios, to particular hardware issues that hardware guys want to solve, and that's been going really well. The hardware guys, they are not interested to hear from the game developers, but they didn't know how and who to talk to, because they knew that each game developer has very strong opinions, and that might be very contradictory. Because they come from many different places. So for me to be there in Tokyo and working closely with the hardware team to connect to the R&D and game development teams in the US and Europe, they really, really appreciate it. And eventually they formed strong ties with key people in the Worldwide Studio organizations globally themselves. So nowadays, I'm still in Japan, but I don't need to be involved. They know who to talk to when they look at some new opportunities of technological advancement, or they look at new firmware updates, or adding new network services. They know who to talk to.
So, as head of Worldwide Studios, you work with a lot of different studios like Naughty Dog, Polyphony Digital, Quantic Dream. What do you think makes for a really great game studio?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's what we've been working hard to realize. These strong teams have very strong culture, strong leadership, especially one of the leaders, if there are multiple leaders, has really strong creative leadership. And they form core team members. They understand each other, how they work, and develop the studio culture so that everyone in the studio knows eventually that when they look at some issues, this is how our studios would choose to solve. So I think developing that strong culture is the most important thing under strong leadership.
If you could go back now to 1994 and tell yourself one thing, what would it be?
Well, I don't know if I would listen to myself, but that's a great question. There are things I wish I knew, like the transition from PS1 to PS2. We are totally unprepared from game teams, standpoint. These things I would like to do, but when I clearly remember, we are working so hard to make games on PlayStation, and we didn't have enough bandwidth to prepare for the future. So maybe I would tell me that you made the right choice, and you should try your best, and things will be good.
So I've got an even harder question for you now. Look, if you look back at all the PlayStation hardware over the years, which one do you think of most fondly?
Yeah, so clearly, I had the most fun working on the original PlayStation because we are a small company. I was like an employee number 32. And because we are small, and especially because the people who gathered to form Sony Computer Entertainment were either was someone, the core member of the founding management teams, or one really wanted to love, video games, wanted to be a part of that venture before we became eventually successful. And many people were questioning, our potential. So it was so fun to work with same, people, who have the same kind of, ambitions. And because we are small, like venture companies, we discuss everything with everyone. Things about pricing, or software lineup, or hardware features, to some those market issues. Everything we knew and worked as a team. So that was the most fun time.
And even harder, what's your favorite of all of the games that you've worked on?
So the games during PS1 days, I was a producer. I was really on the project. And the first game I produced was localization of Crash Bandicoot. That's how I met with Mark Cerny and Naughty Dog. And that was a super fun project. But the one project I really, really cherished the memory of working on was Apex Cape, because I was most involved in the creative side of making that game. So I was so close with the team, and That's my favorite in terms of working hands-on with the title. But from a studio management, standpoint, for over the last 20 years, I would say my favorite was the game I'm most proud of to be a part of the creation is Journey. That when I played the final game, like many people, I almost had tears. I was thinking toward the end of playing the game, remembering about my grandmother who passed away a couple of years before I played the game. So and the reactions from the fans of the game and the story about people who played the game, I was very, very moved to be able to provide this, help this game to be in existence.
Okay, we've got time, I think, for just a couple of questions from the floor. So if you have a question for Shuhei, please line up behind the microphone over here.
Closer. Beyond?
Beyond.
So this might seem like a waste of a question. It's kind of a shame that I'm up here first, but I had to ask for my friend Colin Moriarty and the rest of the Kind of Funny community. Shu, what's going on with Sony Bend at the moment?
Sony Bend exists. They are making some awesome, cool game that we have not announced as yet.
For PS4 or Vita or not announced at all?
I'm not allowed to say anything.
All right, thanks anyway.
Thank you.
Hi there. First of all, can I just say thank you for everything you've done in terms of PlayStation over the past 20 years. I can see your passion for the company and the product. It's awe-inspiring. This may be a question you get a lot, but you mentioned Crash Bandicoot earlier. Mm-hmm. Are you in talks with Activision into buying the rights of Crash Bandicoot, and will we see Crash Bandicoot on a PlayStation console anytime soon?
Well, yes. Many people ask about that, but because the IP is owned by Activision, as you know, it's not my business anymore. It's our third-party relations team's business. So if you have a passion, maybe you should tweet to Adam Boyce in the States, because Activision is in the US. And Activision is a great partner, so.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Shuhei. Congratulations on 20 years of PlayStation.
Thank you.
You did mention that the PlayStation was the first console to target a mature player base. I think the most important game to do that in the UK was Wipeout. I just wanted to know what you thought of the Wipeout series, and now that Studio Liverpool is closed, is there any chance that we'll ever see the franchise revived?
Well, never say never. There are many game IPs, game series that we kind of stopped iterating or releasing a new game. Because one of the reasons is we always love to work on new IP. And I always encourage studios to look for new ideas and new IPs. And from management standpoint, I try to kind of balance the number of games we continues the franchise-wise and number of titles. The teams come up with great ideas. Like Arnie is here sitting from Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog could have continued Uncharted, but they are very passionate to do The Last of Us. And when things like that happens, we should, you should do that. So because our resources are limited, number of teams we can have working on titles are limited, we have to make choices. So in the future there might be chance for us to come back to Wipeout, you said that Liverpool studio was shut down. That's true, but the people who worked on Wipeout still in the industry. Actually, some of them we are working very closely. Like some of them are providing artwork for the game called Playroom. And you might have seen or tried, the team is helping the Japan Studios team to create Playroom VR. So those people are there if we need to reassemble the team. So I would say never say never.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, thanks for everything, by the way. Will PS1 classics ever come to like PS4 like they were on PS3?
Yeah, so the PS4 doesn't have backward compatibility, so that's all I can say. And for the future thing, when we announce things, we do it appropriately. So I'm not the announcer of things. So.
Okay, thanks anyway.
Thank you.
Hi, Shuhei. Thank you for being here. One question. I'm a big fan of this beauty, the PlayStation Vita.
Yep.
Do you see any future for handheld consoles? Maybe a PS Vita 2 or something like that?
That's a tough question. Because people have mobile phones, smartphones, and it's so easy to just play games on smartphones, and most of games on smartphones are free, right? Free to start. I myself is a huge fan of PS Vita. We work really, really hard to, design every aspect of PS Vita, and there are lots of people like yourself loves playing games on PS Vita. There's nothing like touch-based games are fun. There are many games that are really well designed, but having sticks and buttons make things totally different. So I hope, like many of you, that this culture of playing portable games continue. But the climate is not healthy for now, because of the huge dominance of mobile gaming.
Of course. And just one little more thing I would like to add. People like myself and Greg Miller, for example, would love to see Patapon come to PS Vita. Make it happen, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello. I've noticed on the PS4 you've released quite a few remasters. We've had The Last of Us, Nathan Drake Collection. We're getting Heavy Rain, Beyond. We've had God of War. Is there any chance we could have Killzone 2 remastered for the PS4? And also, what is your favorite non-Sony console?
What's my favorite non-Sony console? I play a lot of Wii U games at home with my daughters. I have two 10-year-old daughters. That's the answer. What was your first question?
The remasters.
Oh,
Killzone.
yeah. So the remasters, we are so happy that to be able to have people who didn't used to own PlayStation 3. We know that because PS4 is doing so well, like about half of the people, roughly speaking, didn't have PS3. To be able to revisit, or visit for the first time games like Uncharted or Last of Us or Journey or God of War 3. So we are kind of doing this remaster thing, selectively, and it's not easy to do it right. It takes a certain expertise. Teams like Bluepoint does an amazing job to get the PS3 games and realize, almost recreate for a better version of the game on PS4. So we might, be able to come to Killzone in the future, but at this moment, I have nothing, I can say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Yoshida-san. Thank you very much for being here today. I wanted to ask your opinion on a story that came out, I think it was this week, from an analyst in America called Michael Pachter. He said the home console market is as big as it's ever going to get. I disagree with him, but how do you feel the next 20 years of play are going to be?
Well, yeah, Mike is fun to listen to, right? Yeah, so these analysts' job is to look at the past and you know, we look at all these like analyst reports, and every year from same company, the forecast change hugely because of the things that happened in the past 1 year. They changed their prediction dramatically. So I don't mind hearing something like that because it's so interesting. The console was announced dead, for the longest time. Even the time when PlayStation 1 was being worked on, some analysts saying that, PC game will dominate in the future and there will be no place for game console. And every time these things are proven wrong. And as long as we have passionate people like yourself, wanting to continue to play on game consoles, we will try, hard to continue and even, make it bigger for the future. So, please do. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for joining us at EGX. My question is, the original PlayStation was originally a product as an add-on for the Super Nintendo. Do you think what the PlayStation brand would be today if that deal went through?
So I just say we have reason to thank Nintendo to to do what they did. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a couple of quick things before we close the session. First up, Shuhei unfortunately doesn't have time to meet anyone straight after the session, but if you go to the stage on the PlayStation stand at 2:15, you'll be doing a meet and greet with the fans there, so do head over to the PlayStation stand 2:15 if you want to meet Shuhei. Finally, we have a little present to celebrate PlayStation's 20th birthday for a lucky member of the audience. So if you could all have a look for under your seats and see if you have something taped there. Do we have anybody with something taped? Oh, have a look inside that envelope, see what you've won. It's is it getting a little hard to open? You've got a 20th anniversary PS4, so come up to the stage. I'd like to present him.
Just a controller?
So we're going to send you the PS4. We're going to send you the PS4. Talk to the Sony reps down in the front there. They'll come and find you. But for now.
Oh, so this is the second controller.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And with that, thank you very much, Shuhei Yoshida.